All right, it's 1:00. Welcome to Peggy's Recovery Corner. This is a recovery podcast. We talk about all things recovery in all different areas of life. Obviously, substance abuse, alcoholism, mental health, and sometimes we have other guests on that are recovering from other things too, like unhealthy relationships or certain types of things that have happened in their lives that did not serve them well. Today, we have a very, very special guest. I actually had him on the podcast before. His name is Michaelis.
It is.
Michaelis is a good friend.
Imagine that.
The crazy thing is that I didn't realize that the last time I had Michaelis on the podcast, when I had you on, we learned during that episode that we ran in the same circles and were probably in the same house, partying at the same time back in probably the 90s.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, small world.
Yeah. Michaelis was recommended to me by another, I had Mariana Arcadia on one of my podcasts, and she said, you should get Michaelis to come speak. And then when I really started to like reach out and see who you were in the recovery world and how far you've come and the constant transformations that you've encountered throughout your recovery process, you became a person of interest for me, and I wanted you on. I also know that we run around those one circles too, those other recovery places where people congregate. I won't say it unless you'll say it, but
you can say it.
Okay. I mean, AA, many different 12-step. Yeah, I don't really mind either.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I know that you're active. You love your recovery. You love who you are. I noticed. I started watching a couple of years ago on TikTok your spiritual revolution page, and I would listen to you, and I thought this guy is deep, like really deep. Like he's not just a brainiac, but I could tell like you definitely have a deep spirit, and you know what you're talking about. And so obviously you have this book now that's out. It's called The Spiritual Revolution. You can be found on Amazon?
Yeah, Amazon. Totally.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that in a little bit. But for those that don't know who you are and have never heard about you, why don't you give us a synopsis of like your upbringing, your age, where you were brought up, and how you got into things and how you got out of things.
Okay. Well, my name is Michaelis Jacoby. I am 46 years old now, and I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. Basically, my dad left when I was around 2.5 years old. My mom remarried an Israeli guy. Me and my mom had a very weird, enmeshed, pretty unhealthy relationship where it was more of like a friendship than it was an actual mother-son kind of situation. And my father, he was like an Israeli Zionist, had spent a lot of time in the military and dedicated his life to fighting for Israel, literally. And what I found out later was actually he was a Mossad agent when I was 30, because a lot of the missions had ended by that time. And so he was living this sort of double life. And just because of some of the traumas of war and stuff like that, he was not really able to show me love in a way that I could recognize it. Like he just wasn't very emotionally available. And so that was challenging. I always felt uncomfortable in my own skin. I went to a bunch of private schools when I was young, but my family itself was not very rich. My grandparents had a little bit of money. And I never felt a part of anything. And I was very resentful. Just as a child, I moved schools every 2 years, all the way through my senior year of high school, trying to escape myself, which obviously, doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
And thank God I found my parents' liquor cabinet at around 5th grade. But drinking was always part of the family, and, smoking marijuana was happening too on the down low. I snuck into their room and found their weed too. Mm-hmm. I just wound up triggering the allergy, right? It was a pretty quick progression for me. I don't think it was necessarily related to my upbringing at all. I just had that thing. And things probably got bad around 18 years old. Me and my mom tried to kill ourselves together when I was 17, and she got put on antidepressants, and I was diagnosed ADHD and put on Ritalin. And I think any sort of speedy anything was my drug of choice. So
wait a minute here. So you both try to kill yourselves together, like in the same time, or
yeah,
the same
we
era?
discussed it, and
Oh, you were gonna. And
yeah, it was a plan.
And what was the plan?
Well, I came home late from being out with my friends one night, and this was like my senior year of high school. There was a lot of fighting. I mean, I was not doing very well in school. I was fighting my parents. My parents were fighting with each other. It was just not a good look at all. A lot of tension. And I came home, and my mom was sitting at the dinner table. It's like 1 a.m. or something. And she was just writing these letters and crying. And because I had wanted to die, I mean, I remember wanting to die probably since I was 5, you know. I just never felt like I should have ever been born. I cursed God from day one for even being here. And, you know, when I was born, like I was pretty allergic to the world. I was in and out of the hospitals all the time. So I really thought in my mind that I just did not belong in this earth, you know, like physically, emotionally, or spiritually.
Right.
So when I saw my mom doing this, I recognized like where she was at. And I was like, oh, yes, you know, my best friend's going to fucking go out with me. This is the best.
And she was writing letters with a plan of, was there a certain way that you guys, you had?
Well, we discussed Thelma and Louise had just come out.
Yeah.
So we had this like romantic idea of like driving off a cliff together. And we both enjoyed Decker Canyon, which is kind of in Malibu.
Yeah.
And so our plan was to just like drive off a cliff. And I started writing my letters to him. We were talking about it or whatever. And then she had like a change of heart at some point and was just like, you know, you're my only lineage and, you know, you need to live on and blah, blah, blah. And so I wound up saying goodbye to her that night and hugging her. And what was interesting is that our relationship had been in so much discord for so long. And that was like the first time that I felt like we were close again, you know, over this thing. And I, you know, had some immense compassion for where she was. And then I started walking up the stairs after I said goodbye to my mother, and that compassion immediately turned to rage and self-pity, you know, and she tried to asphyxiate herself in the garage with her car. And my father woke up to the car running because he's a light sleeper because of the military stuff. And he pulled her out. There was screaming and yelling and door slamming and all kinds of crazy shit. And then like the next day, it was like nothing fucking happened. It was the weirdest shit.
Just ever. Another day.
It was crazy. Never spoken about again.
Now, you said that she then went and got antidepressants and you got put on Ritalin?
Yeah.
After that?
Yeah, totally. So we both got sent to psychiatrists. I think it was the fad at the
Sent
time.
by who? Dad?
It might have been a collective family thing.
Yeah.
Because that was obviously not a great situation. And that wasn't the first time. I remember I tried to or threatened to kill myself when I was in 7th grade. And I remember the school counselor wanted me to see a psychiatrist. And actually, when I saw the psychiatrist, they tried to commit me. My mom was like, we're not doing that. But so, yeah, we wanted to do that. And, you know, this was 1994. So I think at that time, Ritalin and ADHD was all the rage in terms of diagnosis. I think today it's bipolar. And then, of course, there's trauma. And before that, it was manic depression and I don't know, whatever.
There's a lot of new names that have been put on stuff.
Yeah, totally. It's fucking wild, but we'll probably talk about that.
Yes, we will.
So, yeah. So, you know, I got medicated and in terms of being able to focus at school, it was chill for like the first 2 hours, but then like the, I don't know, negative effects of Ritalin would kick in and I would just be like angry.
What were the negative effects? Like
just like empty stomach, like teeth, like shaking, feeling like a tightness in my chest.
And you weren't abusing it. You were just taking it as prescribed?
As prescribed.
17?
Yeah, 17 years old. And, you know, it just made me want to be violent. Like that's really what it did for me. So, yeah, it was not a good look. But anyway, because I had so many side effects from that stuff, I tried different ways of doing it, tried crushing it up and snorting it, tried to mix it with weed, tried to, you know, whatever to manage. And then eventually, once I found crystal, I was like, this is good, right?
I know. Believe me, I know.
This is so much better. I'm going to smoke this because I didn't have those effects, but I had like the focus. And it seemed that like crystal was a different kind of thing in it and that it really worked until it didn't. But I was very like delusional. You know, I mean, the truth is that for the last 2 years of my using, I was homeless. But because I was going from trap house to trap house, like I wasn't homeless.
Because you still had a place to stay. It just wasn't your home.
Yeah, totally. I had no home. Like I watched that, disappear basically.
Right.
So, and then I was
And what
like,
was that? Just in the LA scene?
yeah, I was in Venice actually.
Oh yeah.
You know,
you
just
can
where
easily do that down there for sure.
totally. And I met these people in West LA. I was working in the Venice Boulevard or the boardwalk.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of where I met all those people like Braden, Todd Bird,
Yeah.
all those fools.
My sister was working down there during that time too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Venice Rock.
Like the West End Logic. Like,
yes. Yep.
That's what we used to do. So
it was pretty active.
Yeah, it was great. It was great back in the day. So, but then I just couldn't stay out of jail. And then finally, the last time that I went to jail was for manufacturing methamphetamine. I had my first charge was like an aggravated assault and residential burglary. So they counted that as a strike.
Right.
The second strike was the possession for sales. And then the third strike would have been this manufacturing charge. And they wanted to put me away for 25 years to life.
Yeah. I mean, 3 strikes, right?
Yeah. And across the hall from the lawyer's office remember Bob Timmons?
Yeah. Yes.
He worked across the hall from my lawyer, and he happened to be in town. My parents were talking to the lawyer, and he happened to make a decision to see if he could help. And he happened to visit me in Men's County Jail to see whether or not I thought I was an alcoholic. And he had a relationship with a judge that was handling my case because he got my judge's son sober 2 years prior, which was like miraculous. And he was able to talk my judge into reducing my sentence from 25 years to life to 6 months in treatment in jail, which was the impact program at Biscaloo back then. And then get court committed to Liberty House.
Impact in Pasadena?
No, it was in custody. So they had like an impact program in jail. So Biscaloo and, I forget what it's, Sybil Brand. So there was like a women's prison back in the day.
Right.
Sybil Brand, and then Biscaloo was attached to it. And they started doing these programs at Biscaloo. They did like a domestic violence one and a drug program.
Right.
So I did the drug program because I wasn't doing domestic violence. And I think that moved to like Linwood and then the Wayside. And I don't think it exists anymore.
So did the drug program do anything for you?
It introduced me to the 12 steps, and it put me in a room full of guys who had spent a lot of time in and out of prison who were much older than me. So I got to see my future, but also like all the stuff that they were talking about, the way their minds worked, how they felt and stuff, shit that I thought was attributed to either ADHD, because that's what I thought, or just attributed to like, I don't know. I didn't know what it was. Finally, it was under the umbrella of addiction for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then there's these solutions, right? This 12-step thing. I was like, there's some hope. So that's kind of what I got out of there, and then some tidbits, of course, from some people, some counselors, Louis Lopez, Gary Jones, Louis Orta. But yeah, I mean, that's really what it did, is it introduced me to that there's a possibility of hope for me.
And you were how old right then?
I was 22 years old. Yeah.
So did you stay sober?
I did.
You got out and went to sober living? Or
I went to Liberty House.
Liberty, you're a product of Liberty House. I remember that.
Yes, I'm a product of Liberty House.
And they are no nonsense, or at least they weren't back then. I think
Yeah, they definitely were not back then. Larry Luttrell, who was the director, was deeply involved with Liberty House at that time. And,
Larry, that's from Kansas or Kentucky?
Kentucky, yeah.
Kentucky.
He was my mentor.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah,
I
he
met
really
him.
is. Yeah, he was definitely my mentor. He taught me a lot about people, about my own intuition, about a lot of different stuff,
So how long did you stay at Liberty House?
I graduated after 10 and a half months, but I stayed on to manage it for a period of time afterwards.
So then you got to everything you had learned in your own recovery process, you got to carry that vision and teach the people that were there afterwards.
Totally. But the thing is that what I learned then is a recovery process is not anywhere near my recovery process today.
Was it because it was a rigid form of recovery?
No, it just wasn't really recovery. It was behavior modification.
Right.
It was questioning your thinking. It was building integrity through getting honest. It was showing up for consequences. It was, a lot of self-awareness and self-knowledge being placed on you from outside perspective, which is cool. But in terms of really something that I believe heals people in recovery, it lacked that part.
So let's good to look at it like that. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so um, I mean, I got sober in an environment like that too. There was a lot of consequences. There was a lot of writing assignments. There was a lot of being redirected,
Hmm.
and in a sense, it kind of made me very overly rigid when it came to recovery,
Totally.
especially when I opened my own places. Like
Right.
before that, I tried to attempt doing it at other places where I was a manager, like let's say for a treatment center that had a sober living,
Hmm.
but they didn't want to lose their clients. So you had to be really nice and
Totally.
kind of just bite your tongue a lot of times and not say
It's a
certain things.
different culture today for sure. Like
Totally different culture. It's funny because about 8 years ago, I was actually at a meeting in Westwood that Liberty House had started. It was right. They basically, it was a lot of their alumni had started it, so they had a lot of their newer members and the alumni there.
Bobby Daly.
He was
he
there,
Awakenings?
yeah,
And,
yeah.
okay, cool.
And what's his name?
Ken Mariosh?
Dave.
Dave.
Who was part of Awakenings also.
Yeah, I remember.
But just being in that environment and seeing, like, I thought, am I in an AA meeting right now? Because everyone's grouping someone right now.
Right.
Like at first it was an AA meeting where I spoke, they asked me to come speak. But then afterwards, like they started going and calling on people and they called on one guy. They're like, how you doing today? He's like, I'm good. And they're like, but are you really? Are you really? And then they started grouping him and I thought, oh, this is the type of environment I got sober. Oh, this is Liberty House. I forgot. It's these
totally.
guys.
Yeah, 100%. Which is cool. I mean, also, look, man, I learned how to clean a bathroom.
Right.
I learned how to cook.
Right.
You know, I learned how to show up on time. Like there's definitely life skills that I got from that place. And I learned how to get grouped and how to group other people. But yeah, I don't necessarily know if that's like effective for the long term. I think a lot of people might stay sober in those environments due to fear or shame.
Yeah.
Or even making the house like their higher power.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's a good way to look at it. I actually talked to Dano about this a few years ago about his alchemy house.
Mm-hmm.
And he himself too said that like we don't really do writing assignments that much anymore. I think a lot of people, and same in some of my houses, like there's some writing that happens, but it's not for major issues. It's like, some redirection. Like you messed up a couple times. Why don't you write about it and then let's move on?
Yeah.
So, but so then what happened? How long were you a manager there?
I was manager for, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
And then I burned out. And then I went to go, I mean, a lot had happened. I got to go pregnant. I had a son. I had custody of the son for a while because it was just, she was a little bit of a mess at the time. And
is the son still in your life?
Yeah, totally.
How old is he now?
He's 22.
No, really?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I just had dinner with him and his, I don't know if it's his girlfriend, girlfriend, whatever.
He lives in LA?
Yeah, he's taking care of my family right now, actually. My dad's really sick and my mom is working like all that stuff, it just, you know, shit came and went, and you know, my emotional stability was like this instead of any sort of peace.
Okay. And then what inspired you to move to Bali? Because I know eventually you did move there.
Well, by that time I was really free. So I started this specific process in sobriety probably around 9.5 years sober.
And what process is that?
This dude took me through the big book in a way, and it wasn't the format itself that was life-changing, although it was life-changing. There were some concepts in there that I'd never heard before, but really the emphasis was like, I meet with him on a Tuesday, we work for an hour, we get through whatever pages we can do that an hour, and then the next 6 days until I meet with him again is really about me passing on just what I'm like learned from him that day to as many people as I could. Right. So it was all about service. It was all about selfless practice. It wasn't about understanding. It wasn't about, you know, having a full scope of what the big book
He was
about.
getting you into service as you went along right away.
Immediately.
Which is, I think,
it changed
remarkable.
Everything. Well, what's so funny is that
it gets you out of self. You don't need to try to figure this stuff out for what you need for you. You're like, well, this is what I learned here. Like, this is what I learned.
Right. What's like remarkable that it's remarkable is that like that's how this whole thing started.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like
they didn't even have the steps laid out yet.
No steps. It was word of mouth. It was like no one had any time. They had like a day. And if like you were in a detox bed, they were like, yo, dude, talk to the guy in the next detox bed since we just talked to you.
Yeah.
I mean, it was always an altruistic movement. Like there was no like deep dive in the steps, or I'm going to fucking like intellectualize and break down this big book better than you. And I'm like going to know this historical fact better than like all that stuff.
Big book dictionary.
It's so dumb. That's like the big dictionary is dope, but yeah, like the way people approach it, or even like this idea of you have to work all 12 steps before you can actually do the one thing that's going to help you is crazy, you know?
So, okay, so this, do you still talk to the guy that took you through this process?
He fucking died, dude. He died in 2021, I think.
Did you talk to him when you came back? Or had you been back yet?
I don't think I was back yet. Maybe it was in 2000. He died just before I came back. Actually.
So then you moved to Bali, and when you went to Bali, this style of doing the steps, you went into there with people you met there?
Well, basically, I didn't know anybody there. I had gone to a DJ convention in Hawaii for AA, and there was like 2 people that I met who lived in Bali that were at that convention.
Okay.
And so that's all I knew. So I went there and I just went to meetings and like built rapport, but I was still working with people via FaceTime in LA.
Okay.
So I've not missed a day. I've worked with like 1 to 9 people every single day for the last 14 and a half years, like every day in the book.
Talk about getting out of self.
Well, daily reprieve too. I got to treat that mind, right? Otherwise I'm going to believe that lie. I need to like practice like being in the moment. This is a very simple practice of doing that. And I don't want to forget that I'm a fucking alcoholic. And what I mean by that is specifically, I don't want to forget that I have the allergy, you know? And what's cool about the process is that it's taught me really about what alcoholism is and what it's not. And I think that one of the reasons there's like so much stigma around alcoholism is because people group all this human shit under the umbrella of alcoholism, like lying, cheating, stealing, manipulating, trying to get over on people, cutting corners. Like that's not alcohol.
That's not alcoholism.
That's just a human being, dude.
Right. So what is alcoholism?
It's just I have an allergy to drugs and alcohol.
It's right there in the book what alcoholism is. It describes it more
one
about
symptom.
Alcoholism.
Well, they talk about in the doctor's opinions. We only have one symptom common.
Right.
That's it. The only thing is that I cannot drink and use without triggering the phenomenon of craving or a craving beyond my mental control.
Right.
That's it.
Plain as day. If you really read in the book, like you see the examples that the stories of the different people,
right,
and how the peculiar mental twist, the strange mental blank spots. 1 second he's thinking that thing, the next thing he's drunk, right?
Totally. But people have that all the time. Like, you know, there's people out there who go out and get a speeding ticket in the car, and you know, they have to go to court, they have to pay a fine, have these consequences.
Right.
But do you think that stops them from speeding the next day? You know what I'm saying? Like they'll find a different way, or they try to avoid cops, or they get the radar. Like people are constantly trying to like rationalize their behaviors and find new ways around it.
So if it's not alcoholism, then what is it? The ego?
It's just human.
Just human.
And that's the thing. It's like, I really believe that the majority of what we are calling mental health today It's just human condition.
Mm-hmm.
And if we spend more time just fucking talking to each other
Mm-hmm.
and getting to know like what each other's struggles are, complete strangers even,
Right.
you'll see that like we're all connected. Like,
so I'm sometimes brought on to coach people, right? Some of them have addiction problems and alcohol problems, but some of them have straight up mental health, like primary mental health, right?
right?
And when I talk to them, like it's very obvious a lot of times when I'm talking to them, there are some people that they may have a major chemical imbalance, and that's why they need certain medications to keep them stable.
Maybe.
Right. But I sometimes see, and my friend Chris Howard says, like people that weaponize their.
He's my friend.
He's such a good guy.
He's my best friend. No, I'm kidding.
He's such a good guy.
Best
Talks
friends.
about people weaponizing their mental health a lot 100%, of times, right?
Yes.
And then I listen to this one guy that I'm trying to work with quite often more recently. There's no gratitude for anything, zero. And it's like, I just tell him, we try to read the 4 agreements together because it's a simple read, and I just want him to kind of look at himself. But he's just depressed morning, noon, and night.
Totally.
And he's totally got everything he needs in life, at least at this time. But he wants more.
Of course.
So I think, all right, well, that just sounds like a person that's very self-centered and wants what they want.
Yes.
And if they don't get what they want, they're going to say, I'm depressed.
Totally.
Plain and simple, right?
Yeah.
So the medications that you were on in the past, was it just Ritalin, or did you end up on other kinds of mental
There's times they try to put me on Wellbutrin. There's times they try to put me on Lexapro. There's times they try to put me on Seroquel, which I stopped like after 2 days because it just made me feel weird. And it was specifically while I was in a mental institution. I tried to kill myself twice in my first 10 years of sobriety.
Oh.
Once at 5.5 years and once at 6.5 years.
I remember you said that.
So, I mean.
And why was that?
Well, you can call it depression, you can call it anxiety, or you can call it just extreme self-centeredness. That's the thing.
When you try to kill yourself those times, were you on medications?
The first time I wasn't, and the second time I wasn't either, but I'd been on Lexapro, I think, for maybe 8 months, and then I got off it myself because I felt like a shell of a human. I didn't feel like I was even in this world.
I want to ask you this question then, and you can answer it any way you like, and I know you will. Do you think sometimes when they put people on depression medications or mood stabilizers or anxiety meds, do you think that can sometimes cause more mental health for the person, or more, it can increase whatever it's actually supposed to treat based off the dosages, the highs, the lows? Their body becomes dependent on it. Their brain becomes dependent upon it. So when they don't have enough of it, or they are being tapered down, or certain things, do you think it messes with the chemical makeup that's within their brain?
Yes. I mean, I've known guys that I've worked with who are in their 20s now, but were started being put on mood stabilizers and shit from when they were 6 years old. Okay. And yeah, dude, they do wild shit. But the truth that I believe is that honestly, the pharmaceutical industry, the psychiatric industry has literally no idea what the fuck they're doing when it comes to brain health. Yeah, we can sit here and talk about neural pathways and shit like that, but really nobody fucking knows. Like, the brain is still an enigma. And so I think that a lot of these medications are like, psychiatrists with a blindfold on, just sort of like throwing at a fucking dartboard and whatever cocktail works, and talking to the patient to see about, oh, how's that affect? I mean, I see that shit change all the time, and I do see it bring on, deeper issues. And I think that, like, if people were less apt to, try to use a pill to solve something that's so simple, it's really just a manifestation of self.
So that brings me to this question. Microdosing hallucinogens, microdosing ketamine. It's the latest craze for the last few years now. I mean, it's being offered in some treatment settings. There's doctors that do ketamine therapy. What do you think, like, when it comes to people that are in recovery, if they feel like some doctor told them they have some mental health that they need to address some deeper rooted stuff. Do you think this stuff is effective as far as ketamine therapy or psilocybin or even LSD or ecstasy?
Okay. This is, I get this question all the time, actually. In fact, I was just like interviewed by a company that's trying to write policies for the use of microdosing of hallucinogens and stuff like that. So a lot of people are using Bill Wilson's experience to rationalize this thing. Now, the idea of like utilizing hallucinogens to have a spiritual awakening is not new. That's old as fuck, dude. Right?
Yeah.
Now, when it was proposed to Bill Wilson, like it was proposed in the context of people in a detox situation.
Mm-hmm.
And what he was looking for, and this is because when he got sober, he was hallucinating off of belladonna,
Right.
you know, and his second white light experience came from that. So Bill was under the impression that you needed to almost have a white light experience to open up your mind to this process.
Right.
Right. So at 20 years of sobriety, Bill starts taking acid for like 4 years, trying to
have a spiritual experience.
Trying to see if this could elicit a spiritual awakening. Right. And I see a difference between a spiritual awakening and a spiritual experience. A spiritual awakening is like an epiphany, a revelation, or like an event, which can be a hallucinatory event.
Mm-hmm.
Right. A spiritual experience is the like long-term sustainable application of what you learn in that event, right? In your life, right? The actual practice. That's having an experience with it. Bill had no business at 20 years doing something that was specifically designed for someone in detox.
Okay.
Right? That dude was fucking depressed. He was not doing well. He was cheating on his fucking wife. Like there's a lot of life issues, and I can relate to all those life issues. So I'm not judging him whatsoever.
Right.
You know, and I'm sure that if I didn't find the big book, like I would have been one of those dudes who'd be championing for fucking hallucinogens right now, right? So do I think that it can give you that initial spiritual awakening? It's possible, but for people who are real addicts and real alcoholics, and unfortunately because alcoholism isn't spoken about in the meetings typically, it's all this other fucking shit and people don't focus on the allergy. There's a lot of people in meetings who aren't alcoholics and addicts. Right. So for some of those people, like I'm working with a guy who did go out on an ayahuasca thing, right? Wanted a next level of spiritual experience. And that dude fucking lost his mind and like went hard on some other shit because it triggered the allergy, right? You know, and then I know people who can microdose mushrooms or microdose whatever and be chill.
I know people that still claim the amount of years that they're sober and they microdose mushrooms and they're fine with it. Totally. They feel judged by some that they talk to about it. They say like, there's not a lot of people that agree with this. And I just tell them, hey, your sobriety is your sobriety. I'm not.
Cool. But
they'll ask me what I think. I'm like, I can't. I just can't. Like, I can't unleash the beast. And I feel like it will.
Yeah. Like, I don't care. It's not sober in terms of like entire abstinence.
Right.
Like, I don't care.
It's
fine.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and I don't care. You don't have to be sober.
You don't.
Like, if like that's working for you, fucking I don't give a shit.
Yeah, my friend Gil said it perfectly. He said, if you're still seeking a power from some kind of substance or some kind of formulatic like equation of what you're going to put in your head outside of this power, then you're still seeking something to kind of give you a head change to think that you're going to feel different.
And the problem,
see differently,
like in saving face and calling yourself sober when you're doing that, is that there's people who can't do that.
Right.
And they see you doing that and you're claiming sobriety and they think, oh, well, it's still sober. And then they do that and they're fucked. Right. So it's like a very self-centered like thing to sort of continue to like call that sobriety when it's not the sobriety that we're talking about for alcoholics and real addicts who need to be entirely abstinent. Right.
So what about people that are on Suboxone maintenance but want to work the process of the steps? Do you think that they're still holding themselves back from actually maybe possibly having a spiritual experience?
Well, wait, can I go back to your first question?
Please do.
Okay, cool. So we're talking about a spiritual awakening. That still needs to be followed with a sustainable practice. Like you can't, and let's look at these awakenings, right? the most awakened thing that you could ever learn is that we are all one and we are all connected.
Right.
It's not going to get any deeper than that.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that really gets in the way of us understanding our connection is the self, right? And how we identify with self. So you're going to need to have a selfless practice to follow that, awakening in order to make it a sustainable thing for your life. Otherwise, you're just going to be fucking high for the rest of your life. Like, where's the freedom in that? Now you're like committed to this thing when you're not really actually experiencing what life is, So even Bill saw that, which is why after 4 years, he was like, you know what, this is not super great for the fellowship, but also it doesn't replace the selfless practice. He forgot his own words. And his own words was, if an alcoholic didn't, perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice with others, right? That's how we do that. So, and then back to the MAT, right? Suboxone. What was the actual question there?
So people that are on Suboxone maintenance,
right,
want to be members of a 12-step group, want to work the 12 steps. There's many. Good.
That's the thing.
There's a lot of people that say you cannot have a spiritual experience if you are supposedly the brain's receptors, when you're on Suboxone, will not allow you to actually have a spiritual experience. Is this something you believe?
I don't know. The thing is that whenever I've been on any sort of anything, it's basically cut me off from
power,
clarity, and power.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth is, for me, is that like the God that I'm seeking is twofold, right? There's the like universal God as a whole, but there's also the God that I am.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I'm just a part of this thing. You're God. I'm God. He's God. She's God. He's God. But we're also all pawns of, the universe working in each other's lives,
Right.
So
God is within all of us, obviously.
Totally.
The soul, the way I believe, is the soul was here before the body got here.
Yeah.
And that comes from God.
Yeah, totally.
Depending on, what your belief system is. So, what were you going to say? Anything else?
No, with like the MAT, I mean, I think that like for the sake of, some people, for real alcoholics and real addicts, I think that fellowship like should be kept pure, just because some people can't like do that stuff and survive, and we're talking about a day and age where like people are dropping like flies from fentanyl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like we get to create the fellowship that we crave, right? And it's kind of like why I wrote the book that I wrote, is for anybody to like start their own thing. Like it's not the 12 steps in the sense that it's the 12 steps, but it's really what the essence of how this program was intended to be worked, but made for anybody, whether they're an MAT, whether they're microdosing mushrooms. It's really the practice that those people can take to actually elicit that spiritual experience, so that if they wanted to stop microdosing, they have a practice now. Or even as simple as like you go to your therapist and you get awakened to these things about yourself in this introspection, like it will give you a practice between that and your next therapy appointment. Or MAT people, who want to get into a selfless practice and really like learn to love themselves and see the connection. Maybe it's something that will help them desire to get off of that stuff. Because I think like MAT for life is like not life, dude. It's like
robbing yourself of the opportunity to have experiences outside of
totally
what's holding you back.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's not like a judgment on that. It's just like it's just reality.
Total reality. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, but
yeah, totally.
But I think so. I was going to ask you another question, but I'm going to hold off on that because I think I want to wait to see more about your book now. This is The Spiritual Revolution. Michaelis, you wrote this book.
Yeah.
You kind of explain a little bit like why,
right.
But what is it about? Why did you put it together the way that you did, and what's your intention through it?
Okay. What is it about? It's not really about, it's basically a book that will allow you to have a spiritual experience. So it's not a book that you read by yourself. It's a book that you practice with as many people as you can.
Mhm.
So really what it does is it's, gives you different spiritual concepts, but also a bunch of different discussions. And there are some things that are, I guess, 12-step ish. The assessment mirrors kind of like an inventory process, and the restoration of balance mirrors an amends process. But it's not necessarily stuff either in the big book or stuff that you hear from meetings. It's really directed towards anybody suffering from the human condition. And that's what I was seeing. It's like when COVID hit and I was in Bali, like I just saw like people losing their shit.
Yeah.
Like everybody,
There's a lot of fear.
Yeah, lots of fear. And I was not experiencing any. And when like the meeting shut down or, whatever happened, like I was doing book sessions with people in my house every day. And I was like, I'm fucking chilling. I'm in this moment right now. Like, I don't know what the fuck's happening out there.
Right.
And it's the same thing with me today now. It's like, yeah, there's like impending World War III. There's like shit with the Kardashians. There's fucking Ukraine. There's like all kinds of weird shit going on apparently on this world, but not in my world, And does that make me a fucking moron or does it make me happy?
No, I think it makes you happy because you want to be at peace. You don't want to let all of these events that happen in the world to consume you.
Right. And you know where I'm getting that information? From a little box screen, like in my hand.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if any of that's happening. Like, all I know is I'm chilling with my homie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everything's fucking good. So, like, it's a book that allows you to launch yourself into the present where you can actually find peace. It's a book that's going to allow you to practice getting outside of yourself. And it's a book that you're going to actually learn a lot about yourself in the process, and it's going to put you on a spiritual path that's very simple and practical, but the more people that you read it with, like the more connected you are going to be, the more practice you are at selflessness, the more you're going to spend time in the moment. It's one of those things that you can take for life, do with as many people as you can. You can start with people that you're familiar with and then move to complete fucking strangers. It doesn't even matter. It's just a way to practice being the blessing.
So your intention is obviously it sounds like
world peace.
You put it together so that you could put it out there the same way that guy took you through the steps that time.
Basically. Yeah, totally.
Like read it with your friends, do it together.
Yeah, 100%.
And then get the butterfly effect, like just keep spreading it because it'll.
Totally. And in its like most idyllic and sort of, I guess, grandest explorations of growth, I mean, it will be the destruction of countries, it'll be the destruction of borders, it'll be the destruction of government, it'll be the destruction of the pharmaceutical industries, and it will, be a real sort of peace on earth, everyone working together kind of a thing. So I know it
sounds beautiful.
Big talk, but it's possible because it's just one person at a time.
Right. Right. And you got married when?
I got married January 1st of this year.
Okay. So we were talking real quick before this about
she helped me edit this book.
She helped you edit it.
Yeah,
you wrote it, you guys edited it together, you published it yourself. You didn't want the publishers to change it.
Yeah, they want to do some weird shit.
Right. Past relationships that you had.
Messes.
With women were messes?
Absolutely, every single one.
I brought up to you that I think, because I'm very much in love right now, I feel we have ups and downs, but I think all people do, or many people do in relationships. But I said, I don't think I've ever been in love before, like really felt in love with someone. And you said,
I don't think I've ever been in a relationship before with anybody.
But yourself.
Yeah, I was in a relationship with self. I was in a relationship with, how they made the self feel. Reflections of self. I just couldn't see the other person. It was either what I was trying to get from them or, whatever. And not like necessarily monetarily, but just validation seeking, all that, So, yeah, I really needed a selfless practice in order to be able to have a relationship with another human being, any kind of relationship. The female relationship for me, or the intimate relationship, was always the biggest challenge for some reason. Like when it came to sex and stuff like that, it just, yeah, I think there was like a false power that was very confusing for me, reciprocated back and forth. And also, I mean, I was never able to stay faithful to anybody. So I think like there's a couple of gifts of this process in the book is like, A, it launches you into the present. So you're clear about what's actually in front of you. B, that you're selfless enough to recognize what's actually in front of you, not like what it's reflecting to you about you, but seeing the person for what they are. And C, like when you're connected to a power greater than self that's loving you and wanting the best for you and taking care of you no matter what, then there's a certain fearlessness that comes with that. And that fearlessness is what I use to, and what she uses as well, to be like 100% rigorously honest with each other. And that's the only way that I know that intimacy is built today, like real
through honesty, 100%.
honesty about everything. So, I took her through the big book too. We read inventory to each other.
I like that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like people will tell you keep your programs separate, but if this is your partner, like why would you want to keep anything separate? This is your partner.
Actually, in the big book, it says in one part
totally
that you can read inventory to each other.
But they also, because Bill was doing some weird shit, right? So, they had this like whole clause, especially in the men's thing, where it's like whether to do so would injure them or others, or maybe we shouldn't tell her this or whatever. But the truth is that would never work in my relationship because it's built on intimacy and striving for that, So, this is the first time in my life where I've ever been 100% honest with another woman. Haven't been attracted to anybody else, haven't been with anybody else, haven't slid into anyone's DMs, haven't engaged with anyone trying to slide in my DMs, not telling her about anything about that stuff. Like we communicate literally everything. And, we've set like boundaries for people outside of the relationship and we keep them, which is cool. And one of the most beautiful things is like, not only are we attracted to each other and in love with each other and stuff like that, but like we are aligned with purpose, like very specific. Like my house is like an Alano club,
people come through because you guys are all doing recovery.
All we do is big book studies all day, right? So we've got like a men's stag meeting on Tuesday, we have a women's stag meeting on Wednesday, and then book sessions all day.
I'd love to come through.
Yeah, come through and hang out. Yeah, it's great. It's a lot of fun.
So this takes me back to the question I wanted to ask you before. If somebody comes to you and asks you to take them through the book and says,
which book?
The big book.
Okay.
When you say book sessions at your house that you're doing right now, is it the big book or is it this?
That's big book, but I started doing this for non-alcoholics, non-addicts, or there's some couples and stuff that, but the cool thing about it is that I don't really have to take anyone through this. Because they do it themselves. Yeah. That's the other thing. I'm like, and we talked about this earlier, I'm doing anything. I'm not the fucking guru here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like everyone has their own power within them.
You don't want to be the guru.
I want them to find their own power, in the same way with the big book.
So if somebody says to you, I'm on Suboxone, will you take me through the big book? What do you tell them?
That happened to me actually. And this is what I told them. First, I said, I need to meditate on this and get back to you. I asked him some questions. So I was like, do you have any plan on getting off of it?
Yeah.
And he said, no, I don't ever want to get off of it because I'm too afraid that I'm going to relapse if I do, because that's what's always happened. But of course, like if you get off of Suboxone and you don't know what the program is and you don't know how to work it, you're going to fucking relapse. Mm-hmm. That's going to happen to me too, if I'm on Suboxone or not. Right.
Right.
So he had no plan of getting off of it. So I went home and meditated. And really what came to me was like, yeah, I can go and show up and do big book sessions with this guy. I will treat myself, right? I will treat my body. I will treat my mind. I will treat my spirit. I'll walk away feeling fine. But what am I setting this kid up for, right? So now his whole recovery is predicated on him passing that on to people. Now, there's a lot of people in the rooms who are not going to want to work with somebody who's on Suboxone. They're not going to consider that sober. And so either he's going to have to lie and not tell anybody about it and sit in shame and secrecy about that, or he's going to tell people about that and they're going to fucking reject him and make him feel more shameful. So am I really being the blessing to this kid's life by giving something to him that's an impossible task? You know, so I was just like, no. But if you want to get off of Suboxone, let me know, I'm down. And at that time, I didn't have this book yet. I would have taken him through this, and he could have passed my book on to people with Suboxone, and it would have like elicited the same experience, you know? So that's how I feel about that.
Awesome. I guess I could ask you like one or two more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. But a lot of people, when they go through the big book, they put Bill Wilson on a pedestal. Well, Bill said, and Bill, as Bill sees it, and Bill said, and Bill said. But you know, you talked a lot today about the imperfections that Bill himself possessed. One of them, obviously, was that he was very much depressed. Another one is that he was committing adultery. And I know you said no judgment. I understand that completely. When he wrote the 12 and 12, I think it was when he was 17 years sober. And it wasn't just written by just him. I think he had somebody else that helped him put it together.
So Father Dowling, he was basically like, I guess sponsoring Bill at the time, but it was like, he was kind of like more of a therapist than he was anything else. And, you know, Bill was struggling. He was in depression. He had already been cheating on Lois. And for the most part, he really wrote the 12 and 12 on his own with some influence. And it was basically, my wife puts it as like, this is basically Bill Wilson's step work, you know, which is cool. It's a breakdown of the steps. But now that I like understand the sort of mindset of where Bill was, where he was writing that, which is kind of like this idea of like, life's going to suck. You're going to have fucking character defects, but here's how you stay sober. Do it.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to, you know, sanity's can return. You can trust your thinking. We come to rely on it. You know, you'll find selfishness and self-seeking slip away. You know, the great fact is nothing less. Like all the promises in the big book, you know, when it was the closest to people actually doing the work, which is the other thing. Bill stopped doing the work. You know, he did the work. And you read it in the 12 and 12 where he's like, yeah, being of service is fucking baking cookies for your meeting. Maybe that's a fine way to do it. But the truth is that that's not the service that was rehabilitating alcoholics in the beginning.
Right.
It was the one-on-one carrying the message. So Bill became more of the guy like, I'm going to be serving AA as a whole, but forgot about the simple practice, you know? And that's really what got him fucked up, which is why Bob didn't have that experience, because that fool stayed quiet in his home and just like fucking rode alcoholics like a train through his house. You know what I mean?
Right.
Doing like service work. So I don't fuck with the 12 and 12 just because I don't see the point. It doesn't tell you what the program is or how to work it. The breakdown of the steps, like there's some nuggets in there that are fucking cool, but not any cooler than I haven't read in the big book.
Right.
And, you know, it's like the Cliff Notes, you know, are you going to read the book report on the book? Or are you going to read the book?
Right.
You know?
So it's good literature to read after you go through the steps, but it's not recommended to take some. There's a lot of people take people through the steps straight out of the 12 and 12.
That's how I was done. I mean, that's the thing. It's like things just get passed on the way they get passed on. And I think like people need to have their experience with it. Like, excuse me, there's a lot of people that I know that have stayed sober for decades, living off the 12 and 12. And if that works for them, great. So the message that I really carry is for the people that shit did not work for. You know, it wasn't awakenings, which I did. I just started working with this guy this weekend where it's like he's doing that, but the difficulty is passing it on and getting the people he's working with to pass on.
You mean because it's so, they dissect it, there's so much work, and to be able to convince somebody, hey, I'm going to keep you under step one for a month and a half till we really, really dissect this stuff?
Yeah, like what the, you know what I mean? So that's the thing. It's like you need to get in service right away, and because otherwise, check it out. If the people that I'm working with aren't working with other people, then I am the guru. But if the people that I'm working with are working with other people, then they're their own guru. You know what I mean? That's the thing. So like, this is really about everybody finding their own God within them. The only thing that gets in the way of us and our connection to God is the self. So the more they move the self out of the way, the more they're connected to God, right? So they get to have that experience immediately, which means that I never get to be anybody's guru, which is a fucking great.
I love that.
Yeah.
One last question. So we talk about in the 12-step world, a God of our own understanding. Yet many times we say we don't understand God, but it just is there, right?
Right.
Over the years, I mean, obviously you've had times when you wanted to kill yourself and all that, but you're at a point now. Is it a one absolute God that you believe in your life?
Well, it's evolved, right? It started very simple. Okay. And it was this, because the set aside prayer in the beginning, right? God, take away everything I think I know about this book, about this process, and about you, God, so that I can have an experience with you. So then I need to look at like, okay, life experience. How do I want to feel as I experience life? Right. And at that point, like I said, I'd always try to kill myself a bunch of times. I was living in like emotional turmoil. I had a lot of self-hatred. It was just fucking shit. So what I wanted to feel, my ideal was to feel, fucking at peace, just to feel okay, to feel some joy, And then it was like, okay, cool. What kind of God do I need to believe in to feel that? I need to believe in a God that loves me, wants the best for me, and takes care of me no matter what. That's simple. Now it's all choice belief. Everything is, and we do that shit all the time with everything. So it's like, just like the choice belief of I'm a piece of shit. Nobody's going to love me. I'm always going to cheat on everybody.
You can choose to be negative.
Totally.
And that's going to be your reality. Or if you put positive energy into the universe, you're going to get positivity.
Well, even if I didn't put positive energy to the universe, I still got positivity. That was the thing. It's like, if that was true, I never would have been sober. You know what I mean? Like, even all those, 9.5 years, like the universe still got me to this dude who taught me this book. Even after all the 22 years of all these failed relationships where I was a real fucking piece of shit, the universe still brought me the love of my life. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm being taken care of.
Yeah, you weren't.
No matter what. And I don't have to do shit. So it started with that. And then it started to understand that, like, okay, cool. Really what I am is I am the light of God, right? So are you, which that's more to me about a purpose. So I don't really like even identify, and I know we're not talking about gender identification, but I don't really identify even as being Michaelis today or being anything that is Michaelis. Really, what I see myself as is just a purpose. It's just like a principle, like, you know what I mean? Just my only job on this earth is to be the blessing to whatever's in front of me. The more that I practice that, which I practice it every day specifically, and now it bleeds into other areas of my day, like the more at peace I am. And the thing is that if I'm thinking of a God that loves me, wants the best for me, and takes care of me no matter what, then what I'm really describing is a servant to me. Like, God is a servant to me. The universe is a servant to me. So the best way to connect to that is to act like that, to be a servant to God. And if you're God, and then you're God, and you're God, and you're God, then, and the reason why that puts me in the most powerful position and at peace is that, if I'm just trying to be the blessing to you without any expectation of reciprocation, then you can't fuck with me. There's nothing that you can do. The problem is that I needed to really understand what was self-motivated service and what was selfless motivated service. And the only way I really knew was through the book work, because there's a lot of stuff out in the world that I thought was selfless motivated, but it wasn't. It was self.
It was low-key self.
Yeah, I would have expectations, or I'd have just tied into results or disappointments. And, the thing about the book work is that, and anyone can have this experience today now, is that like, I have no attachments to it at all.
Nice.
So that's cool.
Very nice. Well, I think with that said, you're a true spiritual revolutionary.
Thanks, dude.
It's always good to see you. It's always good to hear you. if you want to check out this book, you should.
I mean, we're not trying to sell. Look,
No, I think you should
Yeah.
check out this book. Like
yeah,
it's, I started reading some of it last night. I'm like reading 3 different other books right now, but I started reading some of it last night. I thought, sounds like Michaelis.
you got to read it with somebody though.
I will read it with somebody.
Yeah.
I'll read it with my
Read-
girlfriend.
Totally, that will be
I
sick.
would love that.
It's like it'll be a whole new like path of intimacy. It'll be sick.
And I want to go through the steps with her too.
You don't have to. You can do that.
You could do that.
I mean, because all the stuff that you would get from doing what I would do in the big book is in here. It's just not.
I think it would make her world if I told her, "Hey, do you mind if we just lay down tonight and read a book together?"
Totally. It'll be sick.
All
It'll
right,
be really cool.
great,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, it's good to have you on.
Love you, man. Thank you.
I will be coming through your Alana house on the west side of LA very
Cool.
soon here,
that.
considering I'm up there too sometimes. Okay, we are going to wrap it up. I love you guys all. Thank you for tuning in today. Was there any questions today, Carrie? Nothing? All right. And we'll be back again next week
Cool.
with a few more new guests.
Awesome.
Love you. Thanks.
Love you too. Thanks for having me, man.